What's up, guys? I have somewhat of a different sort of video for you today. For the past few months and before I created my recent passing course, my strength and conditioning coach Alex Sterner and I have been brainstorming a Jiu Jitsu theory together all about pelvis mobilization. Now in this next video that you guys are about to see, you'll realize just how important it is to mobilize that pelvis for the majority of different passes that you do in Jiu Jitsu, especially the 3 that are taught in my newest passing course. So check out this new video and let me know what you guys think. Does this help you? Does this help you understand Jiu Jitsu more, or is it just kind of confusing? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Close.
Now, before we start getting into the 3 main passes of this passing course, let's first understand how to pass the guard in basic terminology. So again, if you don't mind going on your back here. And again, we're not going to be learning how to pass a beginner guard. We're going to be learning how to pass an intelligent guard. So what is an intelligent guard exactly? An intelligent guard, and one that's very difficult to pass, is a guard in which my opponent's knees are close to his chest and his elbows are connected to his knees. Now, why is this so intelligent? Because if I attempt to pass the guard, for 1, his hips are very mobile and he can follow me. And for 2, even if I were to get around his hips or his legs and started trying to put pressure, he's blocking the space in which I need to pass the guard, which is this space here. I need to create separation between his knees and his chest in order to stabilize a side control situation. Like so, okay? So now that we understand that, in order to get in a little bit deeper into how to beat this situation and why it's so important, first, we must get rid of the misconception in Jiu-Jitsu that this whole area here is the hips. It's just not true. Okay, so let's look a little bit into anatomy. If you would stand in the anatomical position, like so. So first we're going to look at our opponent's pelvis, okay? His pelvis is here, and there's 2 hip joints connecting to that pelvis. And the hip joints are connected by 2 femurs and an axis of rotation that's on the pelvis. Okay, and then you also have the spine, which travels down and also connects to the top of that pelvis. Okay, now that we understand that, let's move back into our intelligent guard model and really see what's going on here. And why is all this so important? So in order to create this space that we talked about on our opponent's torso, we must first force his hips into extension. Now, how are we doing this? We are working with the lever arm of the femur at the very top, forcing the hips down. Now, in forcing the hips down, what are we also doing? We are also forcing the spine into extension, as we are also forcing the hips into extension. Okay, and what is this doing? Which is the most important part of this course. It is fixing the pelvis to a stationary point on the mat. As you can see, as I force both his hips and his lumbar spine that's currently flexed into extension, that pelvis and those axes of rotation are becoming fixed to the mat. Now, why is this so important? Because when his pelvis is elevated, and as I start to apply pressure and forcing them down, he can easily switch his hips back and forth. So for example, I start trying to force his hip into extension, and he can easily switch his hips and now I have to force this other side, and now I'm having to deal with abduction and adduction, which is completely different and much more difficult. So once we pin this pelvis to the mat, the hips and these femurs in which are connected to the hips become much more predictable and easy to pass around, which is the goal in the end. The goal in the end, again, is to force the hips away from the chest and walk around and stabilize this position on his torso, which I personally like to call my DC zone. That's the zone that I'm constantly trying to achieve when I'm trying to pass the guard or enter into the side control position. So with the first pass in which we'll be going over today, which is the over-under pass, it forces one of our opponent's hips into flexion as it forces the other one into extension. Once again, pinning that pelvis and those axes of rotation to a fixed point on the mat, allowing the hips to be much more predictable and easier to walk around, no longer allowing the hypermobility of the hips to direct and deflect our forces. Okay, so that is in the over-under situation, my shoulder will be placed on his midsection, keeping his abs from doing any sort of work. And then also, I will be using my legs to force his femur away from his body, forcing those hips into extension and making it much easier for us to walk around the guard. Once again, because the pelvis is immobilized. And then the over-over is a very similar scenario. But in the over-over situation, we will be over both of our opponent's legs rather than under one and over the other. We will be over both of them, forcing both hips into extension. Once again, fixing the pelvis to a stationary position on the mat and allowing us to easily walk around the guard. And the third example, so we just reviewed the over-under and the over-over. Now the third example, the side smash, is one of my favorite passes and also one of the most powerful passes in all of Jiu Jitsu. Now why is that? For one, when you enter the side smash position, for example, let's turn a little bit here. As I force his hips to the side and as I fix that pelvis in a stationary position on its side, once again, making the hips much more predictable, we are also using our shoulder on our opponent's sternum, forcing his lumbar spine into in-range rotation. Now this is extremely important and extremely powerful. Now why? Because once we've rotated the spine completely to in-range rotation, in order for our opponent to start using his lower or upper body effectively, they must first realign their spine so they can actually do some sort of power or force with their lower or upper body. So let's say, for example, our opponent's on his side. As I'm in this situation, and my opponent were to bring his body up, now I can no longer have this force, and he's able to finally start using the force of his legs and power of his legs to recover the guard, or he can invert. Okay? But if I maintain this pressure, forcing that lumbar spine into in-range rotation, it's extremely possible, and he has little to no power at all. And it becomes very easy for us to easily walk around the guard and enter that zone that I was referring to earlier, the DC zone, or the side control position. So as you'll see during this course, you'll understand more and more why this pelvis immobilization is so important, and you'll see the practical uses through all three of the over-under, the over-over, and the side smash passes. Enjoy.
Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me more than you guys can imagine. And if you guys have any other questions, any other ideas for future content, please send me a comment, or you can even DM me on Instagram. I'm pretty much all over the place, and I'll get back to you guys as soon as possible.